I want to start this video with the question, what comes to mind when you think of a class ability? Is it dodging to refill your melee energy on a hunter, putting up a towering barricade for defense on the Titan, or even putting a healing rift down to increase you and your team's survivability as a warlock? None of these are designed to do damage, and while you could argue things like empowering rift or reloading your weapon on a dodge is damage related, they are in fact just that and only really work based on their utility purpose. With this build, it's going to flip that all on its head, and your class ability is actually going to be doing a lot of damage with this setup. So now not only are you going to have your grenade, melee, and super doing ability damage, your class ability is also going to provide you with damage as well. And on top of that, this is also going to make you one of the tankiest classes in the entire game. So before we jump into that really quick, I just want to say thank you all so much for all the support on my previous video. You guys absolutely killed it, and as of the time I record this, I've gained like 500 subs from it, which is just unbelievable. And once again, I seriously just cannot thank you all enough. So if you're new here and enjoying the content, definitely be sure to hit that sub button. All the support is truly appreciated, and let's jump right into this build. All right, starting off, we're going to be running the new exotic Gifted Conviction. This has the exotic perk, the Gift of Certainty. Activating Ascension or Tempest Strike throws bouncing explosives at nearby targets that jolt and damage them. Jolting nearby targets grants you damage resistance. So the main synergy we're going to pair with this that you've probably seen from the gameplay at this point is going to be Ascension. This reads, while you're airborne, consume your class ability energy to summon your arc staff, propelling yourself upward and creating a burst of energy around you that amplifies allies and jolts targets. So this is going to be great for a couple different reasons. Starting off with the main one, every time you activate your class ability, you are jolting enemies below you, and with your exotic, you can send out these grenades that can also hit enemies and jolt. And then on top of that, every time you jolt targets, you are going to be getting increased damage resist. The other benefit is that Ascension itself will actually grant you Amplify, and this will pair with a lot of things with this build. To start off with Amplify, it will give you a plus 50 to your mobility while it's active, so you only need to run 50 mobility on your hunter if you want to get to 100, because you will always be amplified with this build. And then on top of that, you also can run galvanic armor, so while you're amplified, you will actually get another 30% damage increase, which will stack with your exotic chest piece. So you can kind of understand the flow here. You use your class ability, you jolt everything below, you become amplified, you're going to quickly get your class ability back with one of our other aspects we're about to go over. And since everything is jolted below you, you're killing everything on top of also getting your damage resist, which can also stack with your artifact perk. Now, speaking of the other aspect, let's jump more into the subclass. And first off, we're going to be running flow state. So defeating a jolted target makes you amplify. While you are amplified, your dodge recharges more quickly, you are more resilient while dodging, and your reload speed is greatly increased. So this is nice because now killing those jolted targets will also make you amplify. You're getting amplified from Ascension, and then on top of that, all the jolted enemies you're killing will just then reproc amplify. So you're always going to be amplified, and as the other part of the aspect stated, you're going to get your dodge charge more quickly. I cannot stress enough how quickly this recharges your class ability. I mean, as you see from the gameplay, you can pop it in around 5 seconds. You're literally having another one ready to go. And again, this is also reprocking everything else that we've already stated. And then you even get the bonus reload speed with flow state, which is extremely nice because you can pair this with a volt shot weapon and you can constantly just reload, spread more jolt. And again, with your exotic chest piece, every single jolt will benefit with it. It's not just the one from Ascension. Any jolt you do will give you resist, and you could pretty much be at ×4 resist at all times, which is 50% damage reduction. And again, on top of that, with galvanic armor from your artifact, that's going to be an additional 30% because you're always going to be amplified, and you can start to see how you're pretty much going to be unkillable with this build while also jolting everything on the battlefield and just giving you nice benefits like reload speed. It is very, very fun. Now for the fragments to amplify this build, we're going to be running Spark of Resistance, so while surrounded by combatants, you owe more resistance to incoming damage. This is extremely nice to have for pretty much any build, but with things like Ascension, you want to be close to enemies all the time so you can jolt them as much as possible. On top of that, you also want to be near the jolted targets with your chest piece because that will also grant you your damage resistance. And overall, with everything we've talked about combined together, you're pretty much unkillable. But our next fragment is going to be Spark of Shock, so your arc grenades jolt targets. This was pretty self-explanatory. This is just nice to have, so now your grenade can jolt targets. I do like to run Flash Bang with this just so I can blind enemies. Jolt will stun Overload, Blind will actually stun Unstoppable. So you have two different ways right here just to stun champions, which is great. You can spam your grenades a lot with this build. If you want to run any other grenade, you absolutely can. But our next fragment is going to be Spark of Ion. So defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace. This is great because again, you're going to be jolting enemies with everything with this build, with Volt Shot, shot, your grenades. On top of that, your ascension can also jolt people, so you're going to be making ionic traces everywhere just so you can refill all of your abilities. Again, this will also refill your class ability, and I would highly recommend running marks and dodge because this does have a lower cooldown than something like gambler's dodge, so this is just a no-brainer to take. And our final fragment is just going to be spark of beacon, so while amplify your arc special or heavy weapons creates a blinding explosion. This is great to have. I like playing into blind a lot with this build because you already can jolt everything, so this just means things like our indebted kindness is going to be able to jolt targets, which we're going to talk more about here in a second. But speaking of the blind, I do like to take disorienting blow. If you want to run combination blow, you can, but you're not running gambler's dodge to really play into that. So with disorienting blow, you can just blind a target whenever you punch enemy. This will also make you amplify, which is great. Just another way to get amplified, which is obviously going to be very strong with this build. And also, again, if an enemy is just running close to you, you could just punch them and then they literally won't attack. Now for your super, you can kind of run whatever you want to. All three are pretty decent. I just like running Gathering Storm just to increase my boss damage, since kind of everything else already is ad clearing for you. Now let's talk more about indebted kindness here. The reason this is going to be so good and what I would highly recommend with this build is the fact that this is, one, very strong, and two, it is a special weapon. It shoots special ammo, which can pair with things like spark of beacons, so every single time you get a kill with this, it is going to blind enemies. On top of that, it does have Volt Shot. You're going to be able to reload Volt Shot extremely quick with things like Flow State, so you're always proccing Jolt, you're always blinding enemies with literally everything in this build, and on top of that, you're also getting all this damage resistance. It is just crazy fun. Now, if you were curious for the first column, I would highly recommend Lead from Gold just so you can have more ammo, because with our weapons, this is just going to be your main weapon. Obviously, for your power weapon, you can swap this out to whatever you need, but for ad clear, you're going to be using Indebted Kindness and you're going to be using Ascension, and you're just going to kill everything. I'm literally just running a submission with overflow just so I can kind of weaken an enemy to pair with one of our mods, because we're going to be running special finisher. If you want to run a shoot to loot weapon, that could also work extremely well. Just know indebted kindness is going to be your best friend. You're going to be getting a lot of kills with this thing. If you don't have an indebted kindness, you can run any weapon with Volt Shot. Something like Subjunctive is very good. Just be sure to swap out Spark of Beacons for anything else. If you want to run something like Spark of Focus, that could work, but this does take a little time to proc and it's a little annoying to play around. But any of the other fragments you would like to take, just definitely swap out Spark of Beacons, because you won't have the special ammo to take advantage of it. But if you can't get indebted kindness, this is going to be the one. It makes it so good. Now for other things in the artifact, obviously we've already talked about galvanic armor and how that's going to stack like crazy with everything else, but you can also take things like radiant orbs just so you can get radiant whenever you pick an orb up. Shield crush is going to be the main thing, because you're always going to be amplified and always kind of radiant with radiant orbs, so you're always going to get this increasing grenade regeneration and damage. Unfortunately, we're not going to have anything to increase our melee damage here, but obviously with this build, we're not really worried about melee. We just really want to get that ascension spammed all the time. And then things like counter energy is always great to have, just so you can get some more energy if you do stun a champion. Again, you will be able to stun overloads and unstoppables extremely easy with this build. And then with elemental siphon, you'll make some additional ionic traces with your indebted kindness, which again just plays into more ability energy, so you can spam ascension a lot more often. Now for stats for this build, I would definitely go with 100 resilience so you can get even more damage reduction. Again, this stacks with literally everything else. And then 100 discipline so you can throw your grenade a lot more often, just have a more ranged blind and jolt if you need it. And then pretty much everything else is up to you. Remember, 50 mobility is all you need to have, because amplify will provide you with that additional plus 50, so that you're good to go with that. So you're basically at triple 100s right here. I then opt in just to take up more strength, just so I can again blind an enemy if I need to, but it's just kind of up to you or whatever else you want to go into. Just make sure you have 50 mobility, 100 resilience, and you're going to be good to go. Now jumping into armor mods, if you like to copy them down, this is what they are, but I will give a more in-depth rundown here. First off, I'm running harmonic siphon so I can make orbs of power with my indebted kindness. This is going to be great. This is going to play into a lot of what we're doing. Now next up, I'm running a special ammo finder and a heavy ammo finder just to make more ammo. Special ammo is great so you could just have more indebted kindness. I'm not running things like ashes to assets, because I'm more so just using my grenade as a utility option just so I can jolt or blind an enemy. Unfortunately, dynamo does not work with the setup. If you do use Ascension, it's technically not counting as a class ability. I have tested this multiple times and it does not seem to work. I could be wrong, and honestly I hope I am, and hope I eat my own words, but as of right now, things like Dynamo and even things like Utility Kickstart, hey, post editing rest here, actually Utility Kickstart does work with Ascension. You just have to have armor charges. We'll get more into that a little bit later, but as of right now, sorry for that misinformation. Do not seem to work with Ascension, and if it ever does get fixed, I would highly recommend running Dynamo just so you can get some more super. super, but for now, having more special ammo for Indebted Kindness is going to be great. Now, next up is going to be harmonic loaders, so I can reload Indebted Kindness a little bit faster. Flow state is giving you a lot of reload speed, but I just have this on to give the little multiplier that it does give. On top of that, I do have a momentum transfer and a bolstering detonation, so whenever I deal damage with a grenade, I'll get some melee and class ability back. Since you can spam your grenade a lot with this build, this is just great to have to get some additional energy. Next up is your chest piece, and always go with resistant mods. Just be sure to swap these out for whatever content you're going into. And once again, these resistance mods will stack with literally everything else that we've already went over. Now for our boots, I do like to take a recuperation, a better already, and an absolution. Recuperation gives you a little health bump whenever you pick an orb up. Better already will start your health generation. This is going to be your main form of survivability. You're going to make orbs a lot with this build. This is just going to be great to have because now you can just heal a lot with your damage reduction. This is just insanely strong. Then finally, with the absolution, you could just get a bunch of ability energy whenever you pick an orb up. You want to spam all your abilities a lot, so that's why I do opt in to take an absolution. Insulation on paper seems like it would be better, but unfortunately insulation gives a little bit less energy than something like absolution does for your class ability, so you might as well just take absolution to get the other benefits as well. And then finally, for our class item, as we did see earlier, I'm going to be running a special ammo finisher. I would run utility kickstart if it did work, but from my testing, it just does not seem like it works right now. Hey, yeah, me again, ignore that. It does work if you have armor charge. As you can see here from the clip, if you do get armor charge stacks, it will actually refill your class ability up a little bit. With no armor charge stacks, it does not work, just like every single other mod also still doesn't work. But for some reason, when you have armor charges, it does actually work for some reason. So with that being the case, if you want to run a utility kickstart, you absolutely can with this build. And a setup for the cloak probably would be utility kickstart, proximity ward just for an overshield, and then a power finisher, because that's really the only thing on here that will work with this, just so you can get an armor charge if you don't have one after you use a finisher. That obviously goes to proximity ward, but again, utility kickstart will absolutely work. You just have to have armor charge slots, and it only seems to matter. You only need one. If you stack 3, it seems like you're getting the same amount, but again, if you want to take this, you can, or you can still stick with what the rest of the video is going to talk about. Either option is still going to be very strong. So with special ammo finisher, I'm going to have 3 stacks of armor charges for picking all our orbs up. This is going to be great because I can just go get a finisher on enemy to make more ammo for my Indebted Kindness, and you're pretty much going to have unlimited ammo for this thing, so that's just going to be great to spread more Jolt everywhere. And then finally, I just have a proximity ward so I can gain an overshield whenever I finish enemy. This is great to have just so I can secure the special ammo. Unfortunately, again, really nothing else can work with this because all of this is based on your class ability, and none of these mods seem to proc it. But that is pretty much it. I mean, as a quick rundown, again, literally everything is giving you damage resistance. You're going to be able to spam Ascension all the time to jolt enemies like crazy. Your grenades can jolt, your weapons can jolt. You're going to have that increased reload speed. You're blinding with your weapon, you're blinding with your abilities. You're going to have pretty good super damage. You're literally going to be unkillable, and it is just a ton of fun to play. Now finally, for the most important part of the build, this is the transmog. If you like to copy it down, I went for a very more futuristic look. I took advantage of the new gifted convention ornament. It kind of looks like it has grenades on it. I think it looks absolutely sick. Everything paired together. Obviously, I'm going for a very bluish look here just to play into that arc energy, and I think it turned out looking great. And again, if you want to make your hunter look like this, definitely be sure to copy it down. But all right, that is going to do it all for me. Let me know what you all think about this build in the comments below. I'm not going to go out and say that this is the next best in-game hunter build, because it's absolutely not. I mean, we have prismatic hunter that is just absolutely broken, but if you want to switch things up and have a ton of fun with this, it is very strong, and you definitely can take it into in-game scenarios because of all the damage resistance you do have. And let's not act like blind and jolt is also a weak thing. It is very strong, and you can do that literally all the time with this build. This is some of the most fun I have had on my hunter in a while, and I would highly recommend each and every single one of you give it a try if you do have this new exotic. Anyway, so that's going through it all for me. I wish you all the best of luck putting this build together for yourself. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.